Awesome. Very good turnout for coming all the way down to Hamilton. So thanks everyone for coming out here. It was about 1 year ago today, we actually did our first seminar on CMHC MLI, on about Alberta and why it makes so much sense. And we'd been selling it prior to that, but we've been doing it kind of quietly, more like traditional commercial. So it's been a very wild ride this last year. And what I realized, I was reflecting on it a few days before this, because we actually hadn't done one of these seminars since the summer, right? It was enjoying the summer. We worked hard. We wanted to have some beers, sit on the dock, enjoy the sun. And what we kind of realized is my role and Meta Realty's role and my whole space in this area has kind of changed. My job has kind of changed because for the last year, we were kind of acting primarily as an educator, spitting out the facts, talking about a lot of dry and very boring content and telling you about all the details and everything about that. And don't worry, I plan to spend a lot of time boring you with a ton of details tonight. But the biggest difference now, a year later, is that we're much more focused on the opportunity, the inspiration, showing people what's possible in multifamily investing and this kind of thing. Because now we have a lot more people that are aware of this, they know what's going on. We have a really awesome team, everyone from the other brokers we work with, the mortgage brokers, the lenders, the lawyers, even the insurance people we have in place, the property management we have in place. So we don't have to spend as much time on the educational component because people know, or the agents we work with, the Justines of the world, they already know and they can tell you guys. Instead, what we try to spend more time on is really understanding why we're doing this. What's the point? And I always like to come back to this because what is the reason people invest at all? I think a lot of people just invest because they were told to invest in something, right? You're not supposed to keep cash in your bank account or under your mattress or in a safe. You have to invest. Why do you have to invest? Because money gets worth less money over time. And if you don't invest, you're losing money. Okay, why invest in real estate? Or why invest in the NASDAQ? Or why invest in Bitcoin or gold or whatever it is people want to invest in? And I think for a lot of people out there, the average mom and pop investor, they don't ever really stop for a minute and think about why they're investing in something. Maybe they saw online that like Bitcoin is hype as hell and all these guys like now live in the Caribbean on 60-foot yachts or whatever. But specifically for real estate, a lot of people just invest because they were told you invest in real estate, right? You buy a condo or you get a townhouse or you buy a house with a legal basement so you can get a little extra cash flow. But what are you really trying to accomplish? Because whether you buy one house or one condo as an investment, or whether you buy Bitcoin, the average person buying Bitcoin, I'm not talking about the people that got lucky in 2010, or whether you buy a stock on the NASDAQ, what is that really doing for you? And for most people, investing is just like a thought of way off in the future. It's a nest egg. It's, I'm gonna have some money for retirement, or my kid is gonna be able to move into this thing when he goes to university. When I retire, I can sell that house and I'll be able to live off a little more than my pension, whatever it is. But most people are not investing in real estate because they're actually thinking that they can change their life. And what I can tell you is that when you get into commercial investment and multifamily investment, there's actually an opportunity to change your life. And I'm not trying to be, Anthony Robbins here or anything, but the point is that why do we invest? Well, I buy these properties, I'm investing because I want to live in a different type of life. And what I mean by that is not worrying about paying my bills, right? Going on vacation, flying business class, going for 3 weeks, whatever it is your goals are in life, flying a private jet, getting your pilot's license, living in a house with gold toilets, it doesn't matter. But like, if you're gonna take all this money that you worked so hard for in your day job, it should actually change your life today or give you the opportunity for that, not 50 or 60 years down the road. And I think that, in my opinion, buying a single home, a single condo, a single townhouse as an investment, it's not the best way to do things. In fact, it's not gonna really get you anywhere. It might make you a nest egg one day, a couple $100,000. But most people that own a single house, a single condo, a single townhome, they're actually losing money every month. I was just talking to someone at the beginning of the seminar about that. Right? And then not only are they losing money every month, but now, especially in Ontario, there's like no hope in sight of when they're gonna start making money again. Whereas there's different ways to think about this stuff where it's not a side project that maybe one day makes you money, but can actually bring you to another level in life. And that's why we think that investing and being involved in CMHC is probably the best place to put your money now to actually change your outcome in life. So that's what we're here to talk about today. If my clicker works. Or did it, the screen disconnect? Yeah, it's the Chromecast, man, I tell you. Sorry guys, I'll just reconnect the Chromecast. I apologize. When you leave it on Chromecast for too long, it forgets.
It's frozen on there.
Stop. There we go. Always exciting after the big speech. So first thing is, if you guys do want to join us, we host trips out to Edmonton all the time. If you click on the QR code, it does not mean that we're going to force you to come, but at least you can get some of the information. We're going out on November 12th and 13th. Not only do we have lots of fun, but we get the builders out there to pay for all your food, all your booze. We send you out, we go out on buses and we tour actual sites and projects. We see everything from completely finished product, under construction, land that's about to start development. So that way, and we give you a tour of the city so you can get a lay of the land and really understand what it is that we're doing out there. Because I can give you all the slides in the world, you're not seeing the actual real estate, right? You're not touching and feeling the actual real estate. So we run these tours every couple months, and if you don't get the QR code, we can always talk about it after. So what's been going on in the last year? In the last year, well, not even a year, since January of 25, we have sold approximately 1,000 units in Edmonton and Calgary, totaling about $500 million $500 million of real estate out there. And what does that mean for our clients? Well, we have 25 million deposits on hand, and we're generating now about $3 million in yearly cash flows for them, right? And those $3 million of cash flow, that is after debt and expenses. That's, you take the operating income of the building, you subtract the mortgage. We're generating around $3 million in cash flows, which is approximately a 12% cash on cash return on average. Now, obviously there's projects that do better and do worse, but the point is, in comparison to the people I talk to right now who are losing money every month in Ontario and losing building value, we've generated a lot of value for our clients over the last 12 months. Tell me it's not disconnected again. No. Oh, Chromecast, baby.
Be your resetter.
Oh my goodness. Sorry guys. I usually use an HDMI, but Justine wanted to make it exciting for us. Yeah.
I can hook you up on HDMI, but it's going to be tight there.
It's okay. We'll just roll with it. Let's see if it. So that brings me to my favorite statement, and this is actually a German phrase, and it's Fries oder Strib. And what does it mean? It means sink or swim, right? And it's a business sentence, but it basically means you have to be willing to think on your feet. And we are in a very turbulent real estate market. Going back to what is happening in Ontario, people are down on their equity, right? People are negative cash flow every month. We're seeing rents are falling here. Vacancy rates are rising. The way we used to invest, buying pre-construction, hoping for appreciation, even buying homes in the suburbs, putting in a basement unit, it's not working right now. So people need to be willing to adapt, sink or swim, adapt or die, however you want to phrase it. The point is you have to be proactive when you're investing. You have to see what other opportunities exist, and that's what we've done for our clients over the last year. And the last thing I will say, this quote I did not write, is that 90% of all millionaires made their money in real estate. Real estate has made more wealth in investments than all other types of productivity combined. And it was Andrew Carnegie of Carnegie Steel that stated that. So my question is always then, why doesn't real estate make average people rich? It gives you your nest egg, right? And the reason I say is because most people do it the normal way. They buy that house, they buy that condo. They're not looking at commercial investment, which has so many advantages and makes people so much more money. So stop trying to be normal, start trying to be exceptional, and look at these other opportunities that exist that are making people money even in a more challenging real estate environment in this country. So to the actual topic now, I'll get to the boring facts. What exactly is CMHC MLI Select? What is it that is going on over in Alberta? Most people probably know what CMHC is, but it is a Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. And what is its purpose is really simple: to get housing in the hands of Canadians, right? Whether that's your first home or, what most people don't realize, the commercial side of things. So they don't generally directly give you the house, as nice as that would be. What they do is they create creative financing programs that make it easier to attain real estate. Sure, many people in this room understand when you buy your first house under 500K, you can get it at 5% down, under $1 million, 10% down, right? You pay your little premium, makes it easier. What people don't know a lot about is they have that commercial side of the business. And they've actually had the commercial side of the business going back to the 1960s, the first housing crisis that Canada had. When you look around Toronto and even Hamilton, you see all these old apartment buildings. Most of those were built in the 60s and 70s with CMHC's backing, right? Because back then there was a lot of baby boomers and there was no houses. And what they do, same thing. They have creative financing solutions to mandate and push for more apartment building, more rental housing to be built on the commercial side, the same way they help people buy their homes on the personal side. So how does this program work? They will provide lending insurance for multi-unit developments, and what they consider a multi-unit is 5 units or more. So it doesn't work on 4 or 3, right? That would be considered residential. Once you go to 5 or more doors, they call it a multifamily. There's some other, technical things that have to occur, but for all intents and purposes, if you have 5 units on one title, it's a multifamily, okay? And then they have tiered incentives depending on how many points you get out of a bunch of categories, being, the affordability, the accessibility, and the energy efficiency of the building. So basically, they give you nice things, but they want you to give them something back on the social good side of things, if you want to call it. So how do you qualify a project for the program? This very exciting chart, which I had to update because they made some changes recently. Don't worry about reading through this gobbledygook. First of all, these charts are on CMHC's website, okay? So you can very easily just type into Google CMHC MLI Select, you click on the first link, and you'll have the charts I'm about to show you. The only thing that's really important is make sure if you're looking at the new construction or the resale rebuild, because they're different. And if you mix those two up, you'll have a very bad day if you're trying to do your own project, because they have very different sets of incentives. But at the end of the day, if you hit certain levels of different categories, you get points. And when you add those points up, then you get incentives. It's kind of like being an Aeroplan member or something. In terms of accessibility and the energy efficiency, it's basically how much above the code you are, right? So how many of your units are accessible and meet a certain level above code? How many of your unit, how above code is your energy level, like, the insulation, the furnaces, all those kinds of things. And then in terms of affordability, it is a 10-year commitment, and it's how many of the units as a percentage are at that commitment level, which we're going to explain in a little bit. Regardless, you add up all your points, and then you get your goodies for the points. The only thing to keep in mind is you have to have some affordability. So you can't just say, I'm going to make all my stuff from accessibility and energy. Minimum, you have to at least go for 50 points of affordable, because that's kind of the important one at the end of the day. So when you get these points, then you get to figure out what you kind of get from CMHC. The real highlights of this program are 2 elements. Number one, that they will finance up to 95% of your building. There's nowhere else on earth you can buy an apartment building with only 5% down, right? And number 2, they will allow you to amortize that mortgage for up to 50 years. Because if you're taking 95% financing and you want the thing to cash flow, 25 years is not going to cut it, right? The payments are going to be way too big. Now, there's a lot of other really cool little features that they offer, but those are kind of the highlight elements of the program. Because you can think about it on any scale. Most people are thinking, oh my God, I can never afford an apartment building. That thing must cost $3 million. But at 95% loan to value, that's only a $150,000 deposit, which is basically the same deposit that most people are putting on a condo over the last couple of years, right? And then, again, you're getting that big spread out payment structure so that it's very easy to make the project cash flow. And there's tons of other little details in here that we don't really need to discuss in a seminar, because I can, again, bore you for hours and hours and hours. But those are the 2 big points that matter, that make this program so accessible and have made this program so attractive to kind of average typical investors who are buying individual homes, individual condos before. Because now, with the same size of deposit, you can look at an entire apartment building instead. So this is what I really want to talk about, is the affordability, because people misunderstand this. And I can show you hundreds of screenshots of objections from people who don't understand what affordable is. I want to be very clear. Affordable is not low-income housing. CMHC calculates affordability by looking at the average income in the neighborhood, and then they take 30% of that income, and that's your yearly maximum rent. So if the average income is $100,000, $30,000 would be the maximum rent per year, whatever this is divided by 12, not that good at math, $2,000, $2,500, okay? So all it is a number, and they basically say you have to rent those units at or below that number in that neighborhood. And obviously they have the data for the whole country. So the number in Hamilton is not the same as the number in Toronto, it's not the same as the number in Edmonton or New Brunswick or wherever else you want to look. Why am I hammering this point home? It does not mean low-income housing. We're not building slums. These are not government-installed tenants. They're still a market tenant that your property manager is putting up on Realtor.ca, MLS, whatever. They're still taking credit checks. They're still checking pay stubs. They're still interviewing them, and you're picking that tenant. It's just that if normally a unit might be $2,000, you can only rent this one for $1,700. It could still be the CEO of Google for all they care. So people always get in their head. I hear all the time, again, I don't want low-income tenants. I don't want low-income tenants. It's not a low-income tenant. It is not a trouble tenant. It is a market unit with a lower rent. But most of the time, it's not even lower rent because they don't specify how big the unit is. They don't specify what floor the unit's on. They don't specify how pretty the unit is, right? So you're going to assign your affordable units to the small unit. You're not going to make a 3-bedroom affordable. You're going to make your studio, your 1-bedroom, your basement unit. You're going to have your laminate countertop in there where everyone else has granite. They don't speak to that. They're not telling you you have to give the Shangri-La to your affordable tenant. They're just saying, we want to see that there's a unit in the building that's X dollars for rent. And you still pick your tenant. And I'm going to hammer that point home because people never hear it properly. And then I always hear after, I don't want low-income tenants. They're not low-income tenants. You could have a guy making $20 million a year rent that unit. Plus, I forgot to mention as well, that rental number only speaks to the dwelling. Parking, lockers, anything else they can get as a benefit in the building, you can charge for, right? So you might have a unit that you're discounting the rent, but then the parking on that unit's $500 and everyone else only pays $100. So it's I'm not saying manipulate it. I'm not saying we're cheating. I'm just saying they want to make sure someone has an affordable unit where they can sleep at night and not die in the cold, okay? Everything else is at market or whatever you want to charge. In terms of the energy efficiency and in terms of the accessibility, I'm going to tell you these are super boring topics and you don't really need to know anything about. And I'm literally going through an energy study right now on one of the projects I'm purchasing. All I do is I call the guy and I say, we need 40 points from energy, run the thing. And he takes the drawings, he puts it into software and he tells me, okay, you're 95% of the way there. We need to add some LED lights and a low flow toilet. And then it's approved. So why am I saying it's boring? Because unless you want to do this as a job, you really don't need to know how to get 40% over energy or 40% over accessibility. They hire a consultant. The consultant tells you what needs to be done. They write a report and CMHC says, cool, right? Whether that work even gets done or not, CMHC does not check. I'll tell you that much. But I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying affordability is something we can all understand. These elements are something that a professional, same way you don't ask an architect why there's a beam here or whatever, the consultant just provides the data you need and the builder will implement it. But you can take these points from here to minimize the amount of units you may have to rent as affordable at the expense that you might have to build with a more expensive product, raising your base price, right? So these are all things that you balance out and make decisions on depending on the features of that building. But we really care about affordable because we're talking more about Alberta, and I'll explain in a bit why Alberta is so special. But again, energy, accessibility, unless you want to really dig into it, you don't need to understand. So the key benefits of this program that I've discussed is that you get up to a 50-year loan, you get up to 95% of the cost, which means you can be as low as only 5% down, You're getting below prime interest on fixed year mortgages with up to 10-year terms. So when you buy a residential property, the maximum term you can do is 5 years. We have 10-year bonds in this country. You can do 10-year terms. If you're a big buyer and you're buying a $20 million apartment building, you probably want a 10-year mortgage, because if it cash flows today, you're sleeping pretty well at night for 10 years. To put this in perspective, in 2021, this program was doing 10-year money at 1.9%. It's only 2025, guys. So everyone else is up at 6-7% doing renewals, shitting their pants. And people who bought apartment buildings in 2021 have 6 years left of 1.9%, right? And 5 years is always they can do 5 or 10. 5 will always be a little bit lower interest rate, but don't get distracted, because sleeping well at night for 10 years, knowing your interest rate's not gonna change on a big mortgage, very comforting, very comforting. And why do they do that? Because CMHC is not a profit center. They're in the business of delivering housing. They want it to be safe for people to invest in this. They don't want people defaulting because in 5 years, interest rates went up from 1.9. Imagine those buyers, if interest rates, 5 years, and they had to renew at 7%. Every project would default, right? But those guys in 10 years, even if rates are high, you've paid off so much principal, you're not worried about it. So they really try to de-risk it. Now, in terms of where rates are below prime, depending on the size of your project, we're seeing 5 years as low as 3.5% today. 10 years, probably around 3.8, 3.9. That would be on a bigger loan. On a smaller loan, it might be around 3.9 for 5 years and around 4.1, 4.2 for 10 years. But you're getting extremely aggressive interest rates because it's insured by CMHC. It's just like when you do it on residential, it's the lowest rates you'll get because there's basically no risk for the builder. So you get very low deposits, you get stability for a long time, and you get the lowest interest rates you can get anywhere. Why? Because that's the only way the government knows how to incentivize people to build buildings. So what does it mean? It means you get high returns and you get positive cash flow. But then, whoops, wrong button. So then people say, how is it possible? How can you basically say that you're going to get high returns and positive cash flow? Well, the reason is because it's not me saying this is what happens. CMHC has to prove your project. There's so many people in this stages that have looks at this thing. And CMHC has no financial incentive to improve your project. They're all government bureaucrats. They don't get paid bonuses for doing loans. It's actually a problem because they're so backlogged. I wish they did. But like when you go to a bank to get a loan, they have a financial incentive to give you that loan. That loan clerk is getting a fee. CMHC, they don't get paid extra for giving out the loans. So they really care, will this thing actually paper? Will the cash flows be there? Because our goal is to get housing delivered, not take over projects that are losing money. So when they look at this, they look at the underwriting that we get done from the bank, the appraisal we get done, and then they take all of their data, because remember, they also have the biggest rental data on the planet. You can go on their website, by the way, and look up rental data for the entire country. Different rent rates, different vacancy rates, like 5-year, 10-year averages. They have all of that because they have millions of data points. And then they say, will this thing actually cash flow or not? And if they don't believe you, they won't deny your project. They'll just give you a smaller loan. And then it would be your decision if you want to take it or not. Their requirement is that your loan hits at minimum of a debt service of 110%. So for people who are not familiar with commercial investing, debt service ratio is how much over your mortgage payment the building is earning, right? So 110%, very simple numbers. If your mortgage costs $100 every month, they want that the building makes at least $110 every month. They want a 10% buffer. That's their bare minimum to lend on. So they will never give you a mortgage that puts you under that number. And when we talk about the income, we're not talking about like a pro forma that I saw all the time in pre-construction that has like taxes, insurance, and that's it. A proper pro forma that has every single expense. Usually the expenses are exaggerated, and then it takes into account vacancy, it takes into account long-term repair budgets, it takes into account property management, and it's like your worst case scenario, right? Because they don't care about the days you don't have vacancy, they care about those things. And they'll look at the vacancy data from that neighborhood and say, that 3%, no way, we're bumping you to 5, that kind of thing. So their minimum is 110. We generally look for anything over 115. because it makes me feel better if we sell projects that have extra fat, because extra fat gives you margins for error or market changes or other things, right? And I can tell you that, you know, in Alberta, it's much easier to find deals that have those higher coverage ratios because of a lot of factors we'll get into later on. But the point is that you're having all these different people look at this deal. It's not just Jake, it's not just Justine, or it's not some shady mortgage broker doing it. You have literally an appraiser that's got his license on the line. You have the lender who can get in trouble with CMHC, and then you have a person at CMHC who has literally no incentive. They're just a bureaucrat to tell you this project works. So really what you're doing is you're leveraging government-backed financing programs to maximize your investment. And it just goes back to that whole concept of like, why would you want to swim against the current? Why not use the programs that are available to us? Or as I like to say, this country takes so much fucking taxes from you. At least get a program that can make you money, right? Like we hear every day about the government spends all this money on this program, that program, ArriveCan, $50 million for 2 contractors. This is your chance to get a chunk of government money back. It's pretty much the only way in Canada to actually make money is get on the train with the government. So what is it then? There must be a catch, there must be challenges. Like if it's so good, if it's so easy to be done, and it's like, then why isn't everyone doing it, right? And it's kind of funny that I say it like that because a year ago, people always thought we were like making this up. People said this is literally too good to be true. It can't really exist. You guys are like selling swampland in Florida like back in the day or something. But the big challenge with this program, and it still exists, is that they didn't really envision it for what we're doing. They really envisioned it that you, Mr. Investor, would go out and find a piece of land. You would hire a contractor, a planner, all these people, spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars getting approvals from the city, and then actually get someone to build you your building at your own risk. The big challenge with that is people who want to be a builder don't want to be a landlord. There's a lot more people who want to be a landlord than a builder, because a builder is a full-time active career. A landlord is supposed to be your money while you sleep, you know, unless you want to own 1,000 buildings. It's supposed, people like it because it's a passive investment. And not just that, but unless you know what you're doing in construction and development, you're going to get absolutely killed because it's a very cutthroat industry, right? They can smell a fish walking through the door. They're going to like rip you off at every corner along the way. But even before that, the biggest challenge is taking on a piece of raw land. It's so risky. Can I get the approvals of the city I need? CMHC doesn't finance raw land. You're going to have to either pay cash for the land, or you're going to have to get a loan that's going to be like 10, 11% from a private lender. So the challenge with this program was that there's a disconnect between those who want apartment buildings and people who want to be builders. And it really did not get utilized a lot for many years until basically pre-construction slowed down and builders had all these pieces of land. And we're going, well, shit, we bought all this land. Now what are we going to do? And that's where we kind of put a bunch of things together, started talking to a lot of builders, and realized, what if we could sell an apartment building the way we used to sell a pre-construction house or a pre-construction condo, where all of the pain is already being done by the builder. The land acquisition, the entitlements, the site plan design, CMHC application, the construction management, even leasing up the building and managing it is all done by the builder. So now someone who just wants to be a landlord doesn't have to worry about all that painful stuff at the beginning of the process. And even then, even the costs are controlled. So what I like to say is, when back in the days to go look at a condo, you walk into a sales center for Tridel, you want to buy a 1-bedroom condo, and it's a beautiful 1-bedroom condo. They say it's $600,000. You buy it, cool. A couple of years later, you get the keys to your condo. Whether Tridel made money on that or not your problem. If Tridel had to buy that land 20 years ago and fight the city for 20 years, it's not your problem. Who's the architect? Who gives a shit? You got your keys to your condo. If there's any problems, there's a warranty, blah, 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 blah. That's what we've now done with apartment buildings. So whether it's a 5-unit building or a 200-unit building, they say, this is the building, this is the location, this is the price, and this is the timeline you'll get the keys, and that's it, right? And you don't have to worry whether the builder makes money or doesn't make money, how much money they make, whether the city's already approved it. They've already done all that work at the beginning. So you're basically just taking something, you're getting your shiny brand new building that meets all the requirements of the city, of CMHC, and then you just get the cash flows that come out of it every month. And that's kind of what made the difference. That's the hard part, is we had to work with the builders and redesign a lot of projects to work with this program. So in terms of how someone qualifies for this, this is what I really think shocks a lot of people who've never done commercial real estate before. Your personal income is irrelevant in commercial real estate. And it's getting harder and harder to buy multiple properties in Canada, right? I mean, I can't remember what year it was, but everyone used to be buying pre-con, resale. And even if you made $10 million a year, after like 5 units, the bank didn't want to give you financing anymore, right? Because it's all off your GDS, TDS, and then the more properties you bought, they just kept lowering the ratios. How do guys buy 500 unit buildings then, right? Or how do they buy a shopping mall? Well, because the property supports itself, the income. If we go back to that debt service coverage, that's why they care that you have that overage in your rents, because it's the property that qualifies for the mortgage, not you. We do deals with retirees. We do deals with people who are not really living in Canada and shows 0 on their T4. I've bought almost 200 units and my T4 shows $54,000 a year. I'm not even kidding, I almost couldn't get a loan. But I just literally got a COI on I just literally got approval on a loan for one of my CMHC deals, $6.8 million. No problem, it was easy compared to that. The big difference is when you get into commercial real estate, they only care about your assets, your net worth, and if the building itself qualifies. So in Canada, they always want to see that you have a little bit behind. So we always make sure you have that 5 to 10% of the deposit. They want to see that you have liquidity between 10 and 20% of the total project value. So what do I mean by liquidity? Cash, gold, stocks, bonds, lines of credit. And then finally, a total net worth of approximately 25% of the project. As long as you have those things and your credit score is not horrible, and it doesn't have to be good, just not like horrible, right? And obviously you don't have like back taxes or lawsuits or any other problems on your file, then you are approvable for this program as long as you have a building that actually makes sense, that's actually going to produce those cash flows. And I will repeat again, multiple transactions with people who are retired and show 0 income is not an issue because the building is what's supporting it. So to put that in real numbers, if you're looking at a $2 million building, you'd want to see that they at least have the $100,000 deposit. And then depending on the type of loan, which we don't have to go that in the weeds, they'd want to see that you have an additional $200,000 to $400,000 in liquid assets and a total net worth of $500,000. But the liquid assets and the net worth overlap, right? So most people, if you already own a home and you have some savings, you can it usually works itself out. Because anyone that's got like 100 grand sitting around for an investment probably owns a house and has a few $100,000. Maybe they have a line of credit, they have some RSPs, that kind of thing, right? But again, personal income does not matter. And one other caveat on that is it has to be Canadian assets and income. So I've had people, I wish we could do deals, like very wealthy Americans, people from Dubai, they cannot unfortunately do anything unless they can move the money here. Oh, sure.
The deposit, can it come from the line of credit?
Yeah, they don't care.
And liquidability and net worth, can that be residential real estate, like residential and investment?
Well, liquidity wouldn't be real estate because liquidity, like definition of liquid is you can make it cash in the same day, right? So you can't sell a house in the same day, but net worth is primarily real estate. They don't do any fancy stuff. They're old school. Like it's the old school assets. They don't do Bitcoin. They don't do any of that stuff. It's like houses, bonds, stocks, gold, the boring stuff. Cash is king, of course, at the end of the day, but yeah.
Is there foreign home buyers tax also on this kind of property, or foreigners can buy?
Foreigners can't do this program at all. Not because we care about foreign home buyers tax or ban. It's because you have to be at least a PR to apply to this program. There's ways to work around it. There's solutions for these problems, which we can discuss on a one-on-one basis. But this is a program for Canadians by Canadians, essentially, right? But there's always solutions because no one's going to say no to building an apartment building, and there's ways to work it out. I just did a deal with the guy who just moved here from Israel. He has lots of money, he has 0 credit, and he doesn't have a PR yet. He's on a temporary work visa. Deal's done. So there's ways to make it work, but we get creative. So in terms of that summary, we have government-backed program up to 95%, 50-year amortizations with 10-year terms, the lowest interest rates on the planet, and you have a third party who doesn't make any money off of the project, making sure that it actually works, and all these deals are fixed price contract. So the risk, you're extremely de-risked in this kind of thing, right? I mean, how can you lose? You're swimming with the current, you're taking advantage of government programs to invest and make money. But there's more, because they really want to make it good. And this is the part that when I talked at the beginning about actually building wealth, this is the part of the program that truly allows you to build wealth. Because the numbers we're talking about, $2 million, 100 grand, that's like an 8-unit building. And if you look at the numbers, we have tons on our Google Drive, ones we've sold, ones available. They're going to cash flow. They're going to do great, but they're not going to change your life. They're not going to, as I said, like let you fly business class or buy like a villa in Aruba, right? So how do people actually get rich in real estate? It's this. It's pari passu lending. So pari passu is a Latin term, which means equal footing, side by side, however you want to get into it. I'm not a Latin scholar. Pari passu lending is something you generally do not see in residential real estate, but is done all the time in the commercial side of business. CMHC is a big user of it. The other big user of it would be on very large deals where one bank doesn't want to take the whole loan on by themselves. Because sometimes if it's like $1 billion, you want like 4 or 5 banks. Pari passu just means that you have multiple loans that are at equal footing. So you can have more than one loan, but it's not like a second mortgage. It's a second first mortgage. Why is this important? Because if you're in a 10-year term and you buy a property today and it's worth $2 million, and in 2 or 3 years, the market goes in your direction, now it's worth $2.5 million, how do you get access to that money? The rents have gone up, there's enough cash flow, but you don't want to sell it, it's a good building. You can go back to CMHC with your new appraisal, with your new rent roll, and you can get that money out, but you're not taking a second loan that's at like 10% interest. You're getting a second first mortgage from them. It'll be with the same lender, and they're going to blend the current rates with the old rate. So what I'm saying, it won't be the exact same rate because the interest rates could be different in 3 years. But what I'm saying is it's a first loan rate, right? If the mortgage rates are you're paying first loan, you're able to expand your loan without breaking your original loan to get equity out of the deals. So why is this important? Because you can end up owning apartment buildings with zero of your own money. And how fast that happens is totally up to the market, right? I mean, you can get lucky. You can buy a building today and in a year it's up 20%. We've had multiple years where property values have gone up 20%. You could also buy a building today that next year is worth less money. But if it's cash flowing, you don't really care. You're still getting your cash flow every month. But what I can pretty much promise you is if you look through history, there's very few time periods where over 10 years or more, values have dropped. And most of the time, over 5 years or more, values have gone up, right? So as soon as there's enough value there, you can pull out that equity. And if you're smart, you'll use that equity to go buy more apartment buildings. That's how guys get rich. That's how you get the fuck you money. It's not buying one condo at a time or buying one house at a time. It's not getting a better job that pays you more money. Because even if you make $1 million a year, you're still going to only be able to do a few of these. The guys who own 100 doors, 1,000 doors, 10,000 doors, they did it through pulling out equity when the time was right and buying more real estate. That is how guys became worth hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. And you might think it can happen to them, it'll never happen to me. Any person who starts with an 8-plex could pretty easily, with a little bit of luck in terms of the market not going the wrong way on them, and decent rents over a 10-year period, easily end up owning 30, 40, 50 doors within a decade. There's lots of guys that start with an 8-plex that end up owning hundreds of doors in a 10-year period, right? It depends how aggressive you want to be, how much risk you want to take, how lucky or unlucky you get with the market. But the point is this is how you make the money, because one 8-plex is never going to make you rich. That's why I say, what's the real objective? That was the whole spiel, because buying one condo is never going to make you rich. Even if that condo cash flowed a lot, it's $200-300 a month positive cash flow, cool. You can pay your maintenance fee on your house or whatever it is. That's not going to change your life, right? But if you have one 8-plex that cash flows $15,000 a year, and over a period of 10 years, you can turn that into 10, now you actually have a whole income. But the thing is, it kind of spitballs, it kind of rolls downhill like a snowball. It gets bigger and bigger because you buy one more, now you have 16 units. Well, next time you can refinance those, you can buy 30, 40 units, right? It allows you to keep growing rapidly. And if you really don't think this is possible, I can tell you a story about a personal family friend of mine, and he's actually kind of from this area. He's from Niagara Falls region, Angelo Butera, owner of Panoramic Properties. He owns near, I'll tell you after, but he came into this country in the 1970s, grade 7 education from Italy, barely read and write, started working in construction, bought some crappy old 5-plex. They didn't really have this program at the time, but he used his construction knowledge to renovate it, pull out equity, go. They own $2 billion of real estate, right? So he came here with no money, could barely speak, didn't go to Harvard, owns half of Niagara Falls, owns half of Sudbury, and he did it by pulling out equity from projects, obviously finding good projects, the right timing, the right opportunities, getting that money out, never selling buildings. Not everyone needs to be worth $2 billion. I'd be very happy to have maybe $1 billion, that's fine. But the point is, that's just how aggressive you want to be, right? There's nothing that stops any normal person who can start off with one investment in multifamily from growing that into something substantial. I personally started, my first building was in 2015. And now I'm in the process of over 200 doors, right? And it's not because I made lots of money and kept spending my income. It's because I kept pulling out equity from every deal and getting into the next deal. That's where the real power in this comes from. That's where the ability to actually get into a life-changing scenario comes from. And I'm currently have, as I mentioned, I just had a 24-plex in Alberta that's approved, and we're starting construction in about 2 weeks. And basically the way that deal is structured, I should be able to then go buy another one about 6 months from now, right? And so even 124, it's a nice building. It's gonna make me a great income, but 48 is gonna make me a lot more income. So that's where the real power comes from. It's like playing the game with cheat codes on, literally, because they let you keep taking your own money out as long as the building supports its rents. Sorry, you have a question?
When you use this program, are you limited to one purchase, or you can, like,
Nope.
when you pull equity out, you can use the same program again?
Yeah, they don't care. You can use, for anyone in this room, including me, there's a very slim chance anyone in this room is borrowing big enough for them to say stop. They do have something called big borrower status. I think it's 900 million. So, and because this is commercial, I didn't explain that point. Commercial lending is not personal lending. These loans, I didn't even say that, sorry. These are not on your credit report, guys. This is secured against the building, okay? Theoretically, you're supposed to tell when you go get a loan that you have these other loans, but it's not on your credit. There's no way for a bank to know, a credit card company to know that you even have these loans. So CMHC does not care. The lenders do not care how much of this you do, because every building is supporting itself, right? And in theory, every building you buy is actually giving you more equity, more wealth, more cash flow, so they're actually happier to keep lending to you up until you get so big that they see you as like a risk if you ever defaulted. It becomes like a too big to fail thing. And then they just change the requirements. But if you ever get told you're a big borrower, I don't think you're complaining. It's like, oh, I had to pay too much income tax because I made too much money, right? But for the average person, even no matter how aggressive you are, none of us are probably going to hit big borrower in our lifetime. Now, how many can you apply for at the same time? Theoretically, multiple. But if you're kind of marginal, like if you have the bare minimum net worth and equity, probably get one approved and then do the next one. Even though they have minimums, they like you better when you have a strong application. So when I say up to 95%, if you're right on the limit, maybe they only give you 92%. Because they're like, this guy doesn't have an extra penny in case anything goes wrong, we'll cut him down to 92. But if you easily exceed the requirements, they're more happy to lend bigger. So depending on your personal situation, but yes, there's lots of people going through multiple applications at the same time. There's guys who own 50, 100 apartment buildings, right? Like there's landlords in this country that own 30, 40,000 units, guys. Not the ones you hear publicly. There is private guys out there that own 10,000 doors. And they've done a lot through CMHC. They've done some through traditional, whatever makes sense at the time. I have a friend who we've done some deals. He has 4,000 units in Alberta. He bought about half of them in the last year and a half through this program. So in multiple projects. So yeah, there's no limit, unlike residential, which is the other big advantage. You can literally buy a $10 million building today and go get a new house tomorrow. And the bank won't even know you bought the $10 million building today.
Default on this loan, are you personally liable, or is it CMHC insurance company?
So we'll get into the guarantor stuff after. All loans in Canada have personal guarantees or corporate guarantees. It gets a little more complex. In the States, they have no recourse loans. It's a beautiful thing. You can basically just walk away and give the keys back. You lose your deposit. Boo-hoo. Canada, there's no loans in this country that are zero recourse. It's just the Canadian way. It provides a little more stability, but it limits our ability to have rapid growth as well. But personal guarantees are misunderstood because they're only lending based off the value of the project. The purpose of the personal guarantees are more to prevent funny business, right? Because theoretically, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to carry the loan for a year if there's a bad market condition, or under normal conditions, the loan should easily exceed its mortgage. And I can really get in the weeds on this, but it's more to prevent fraud and other kinds of stuff because they want you on the hook if somehow a bunch of money disappears, right? But yes, all loans in Canada have personal guarantees. The size is at the discretion of CMHC and the lender as a percentage of the loan, and it usually reduces over time. But there's really no scenario where, short of like catastrophic situation, that guarantee should expose you to anything. Because at the end of the day, you have a building worth money. So they're going to come for the building first. You're only going to be responsible for any deficit, which theoretically shouldn't exist, which we'll go through. There's a lot of reasons why.
So are there any rules about applying as a corporation then?
No, it's all done through corps. So we'll explain that at the end. I'll just get through it all. So let's talk about why Alberta makes a lot of sense. So there's this thing called the Alberta Advantage. And I didn't write this. It's a cool phrase, but it's actually kind of their provincial ethos. So about 10 years ago, they started thinking, oil's not cool anymore. Everyone's driving Teslas now. We got to figure out some new stuff, right? So Alberta is different from other Canadian provinces, specifically in its efforts to attract private sector investment, reduce red tape, and diversify their economy. And this was the thing they came up with. And I'll tell you guys, I lived in Alberta for a long time. I went to University of Calgary. It literally is better than Ontario. We always used to call it Onterrible, because it's the only part of this country that actually is free. And I don't mean that like, yeah, freedom. Like, I mean like as in where they actually want entrepreneurship. They encourage business. They reward you for success, and they don't tie you down in bullshit and red tape that drives probably everyone in this room crazy every day in Ontario. And they made a lot of money in oil, and they used that and they leveraged that to have a small government and an efficient process. And that's why so many homes are getting built there, not in Ontario right now. So what's going on in Alberta? Because people think oil is all they have. Well, Edmonton is becoming a massive technology center. In the last 5 years, they've had a 54% increase in technology employment. It's growing rapidly, and specifically Northwest Edmonton, this was announced a year ago, is going to become they're building the largest AI data center in the world. 70 billion with a B project, 10,000 high-paying jobs. So our man, Mr. Wonderful, is backing it, brought it to Canada. This data center was bid for like 20 different countries. So like when you think of a big technology AI data center, usually you're thinking of like Taiwan or Japan or maybe like Dallas, Texas. Not a lot of people think of Edmonton, Alberta for the world's leading data center. But what are some of the reasons that they got it there? They got it there because, number one, easy to do business. Other reasons, they have a lot of energy. Running a $70 billion data center takes a lot of electricity, right? We hear in the news all the time now, even Microsoft and Google want to make their own nuclear power plants now for these data centers. Easy to build, lack of red tape, low taxes, lots of energy, everything you need for a data center. Now, one project does not make or break a province or a city, but it's more to show you that there is a lot of eyes on Alberta right now on a global Fortune 500 level, and money is flowing there. Whereas meanwhile, if we look at Ontario and BC, money's fleeing as fast as humanly possible. So what does that translate into? That translates into a high demand for housing, because if people are going there, they need a place to live. It's pretty simple. It used to be like that here. Edmonton population grew nearly 6% in 2024. 2024, we still had record growth in Canada, right? 3% population growth in Canada, they doubled that. This year, while Canada's basically had a net zero population growth, they still grew at 4%. And Alberta still grew at 4% as a whole. What does that mean? Interprovincial migration. So while Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver are surviving off importing people from other parts of the world, everyone from Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver is saying, I gotta fuck out of here, and they're going to Edmonton. We literally, I don't even make these things up. We had one of our clients wanted to go out and see his project, so he took a flight Air Canada flight on Monday morning to Edmonton, and he strikes up a conversation with the guy beside him, and it's like a 25-year-old kid who's like, I'm done, this is it, I'm leaving to move to Edmonton, I just bought a condo. Why? Because there's just so much more opportunity and quality of life, right? And this year, the housing starts are actually slightly down over last year out there. So you have a record number of people moving there, you have slightly less housing starts, and I can show you the graph, it goes like this. So what does that mean? It means that CMHC plus Alberta is literally solid gold right now. It's like a gold rush out there. That's why you're hearing about it. That's why you're seeing so many people out there going for it. And there's so much more we're going to talk about why Alberta is pretty awesome. So number one is the affordability. So going back to what we discussed earlier when I was really hammering home that CMHC checks the average income and figures out the rents, right? And it's not low-income housing, it's affordable housing. Edmonton, affordable, $1,665. Calgary affordable is $1,738. So that's the maximum you can rent the units you designate as. Does anyone want to guess what the affordable is in Toronto? $1,310. Pretty hard to rent a unit in Toronto for $1,310 a month. Even the shittiest 7-foot ceiling, moldy basement unit that we probably all have partied in when we were 17 or 18 years old rents for more than that, right? So one of the biggest problems in Ontario is the affordable index. CMHC is not good at updating these. They haven't updated it in a long time. Most of Ontario is unbelievably low. Alberta has unbelievably high affordable indexes. So what does that mean is you're not being hamstrung by those rents that you have to make 10 or 25% of your building affordable. You're not getting stuck with massive cash flow losses, right? So that makes it, and in fact, what you'll see is that a lot of the actual market rents in Edmonton are below $1,665 for certain unit types. So a 1-bedroom basement apartment rents $1,000 to $1,200. A 2-bedroom basement rents $1,200 to $1,400. Even like a main floor 1-bedroom would probably still be under this number. So there's a lot of scenarios where we can get the affordable without even losing $1 of our pro forma value. So that's the first reason why Alberta does so well, because you don't even have to spend money on energy. You don't have to spend money on accessibility. You just literally rent the units and say, these are my affordable units. There's no cost. It's beautiful. The second reason is because they don't rip off the populace there. Ontarians are used to being abused. We think it's normal to have 30 to 40% of the cost of a house be taxes and fees. Guys, that's fucked up. It's not normal, right? It's not even that Alberta's good. It's that it's common sense. There's no land transfer taxes. There's no development charges. There are no municipal levies. There's no parkland dedication. A single condo, I don't have the exact number in front of me, a single condo in Toronto has $100,000 of taxes and fees in it. I can't rent a fee. I can rent square footage. When you don't have any of this crap adding cost to your building, most of your cost is going into 2x4s and sinks and toilets. You can make things work. And until Ontario, we're starting to see it a little bit. Toronto just said they're getting rid of development charges on sixplexes and under, right? But they're still half measures. Land transfer tax is the single biggest problem in Ontario and Toronto, because as a developer, as a buyer, you're getting hit with it 2 times. The developer has to pay land transfer tax when they buy the property to build it, and then you have to pay the land transfer tax on the finished building. That's a double land transfer tax, and it's a double land transfer tax in Toronto, so we pay 4 land transfer taxes. How are you supposed to make a project work? Even HST and GST get passed through. Land transfer tax does not get passed through for a developer. So when you remove, it becomes so much easier to build a building at a reasonable price. So we have low delivery costs in Alberta, which is key. The other thing is that you actually have rights as a landlord. Your property is actually yours. It's not the tenant's. First off, there's no rent control in Alberta at all, full stop. Okay? It's like they wish they could raise the rent on people on a daily basis. Number 2, you are allowed to take a security deposit. I don't know which provinces don't allow. I know Ontario doesn't allow, but most provinces actually do. It's a criminal thing that we cannot have a security deposit in Ontario. You can take a full extra month's rent as a security deposit. Why is that important? I own 2 buildings in Toronto. My single biggest expense is turnover units. They never remove the holes from the wall from their pictures. They leave the unit dirty. That stuff costs $500-600 to fix. You can never collect it. In Alberta, you have an extra month's deposit. You just deduct it. No problem. So your repair and maintenance on turnover is basically zero. They screw up the unit, you take it away, right? Finally, and I kind of just wrote this in pet enforcement, there's no standard lease in Alberta. There's no OSL, if you're familiar with renting here. Basically, the government in Ontario has told you exactly what your clauses are, what's legal. In Alberta, a residential lease is basically like a commercial lease. Whatever you write in there within reason is enforceable. So one example of that is pet fees. Ontario, you can tell someone no pets. Doesn't matter. They bring a pet the very next day, there's literally nothing you can do. In Alberta, you can evict them for that. Or you can say you owe me an extra $100 a month for wear and tear. And it's like, when I explain this to people, they're like, no, there's gotta be a catch. I'm like, no, they believe in property rights in Alberta. Finally, people get evicted in 14 days, right? So, like, it's called a functional economy. I don't know what else to tell you. The thing is, like, I look at pro formas, I look at cash flow analysis in Ontario, and people put 3%, 4% bad debt and vacancy. But, like, if you own a 5-unit building and one tenant doesn't pay you in Ontario, you're not getting them out for 12 months. So that's 20% bad debt. There's no such thing as 5% bad debt in Ontario. You can evict someone here faster than, I don't know, Amazon orders show up. And even if they appeal it, you can have the whole case resolved inside of a month. And there's no bullshit here. You know how many landlord-tenant cases have been doing? Oh, this person's had a bad outcome in life. Let's give them a payment plan. Let's give them time. No, there's none of that. The only valid reason an appeal works in Alberta is if they actually paid their rent and they can prove they paid their rent, which is a valid reason, you know? There's no sob stories. There's none of that. One of our builders even they bought a property, a redevelopment site. It's under construction now. They found out when they went to go to the property, there were squatters in there. They didn't know about it when they bought it. It wasn't disclosed. The squatters had lived there for 9 years. The previous land owner didn't care. He let the guy live there for free. And the builder was nervous. Like, shit, we have a squatter. This guy's proof he's been here for 9 years. We're never going to get him out. He was out in 2 months still. And that's like a more complicated case. So like you have real property rights there, which means you also don't need to go through a ridiculous tenant screening process like here. And it's actually better for tenants too, because a normal kid who makes 50 grand a year, you're willing to rent to him. Because if he doesn't pay his rent, he's out the door. Guess what? They pay their rent. They don't want to get evicted, right? When you create a system in Ontario that rewards you for bad behavior, people take advantage. So it's really a magic formula. You have strict laws in favor of the landlord against the tenants. You have low cost of building these things. You have financing terms with MLI Select that work really well with the rental rates in Alberta. And what does it mean? It means that you get stable, high cash flows with the potential of doing it with low deposits. But the question is, how long will this opportunity exist for? And honestly, I don't know. I can't tell you. The program changes all the time, and it's not as sexy as it was 2 years ago, right? CMHC sees so many people doing it. They see how many people were taking advantage of their looser policies, and they're constantly making changes, constantly tightening the policy. So for example, recently in June, they announced that they were increasing the insurance premium, right? Just like a residential one, you pay an insurance premium on your loan. Used to be 2.8%. Now it's 5.3 or 5.9%. That's a big difference. That's doubling the cost of applying to the program. The deals still work out there. I think they raised the premium because there was problems in Ontario. But they should be nicer and let us have our low premiums over there. But regardless, today they raised the premium. Tomorrow they say we're only doing 90% loans, or we've done too many loans here or there. We don't know what changes in the program over the future. All I can say is that right now it's making a lot of money, and the deals we have today are probably not as good as the deals we had 2 years ago, but they're probably still better than deals we'll have 2 years from now, right? And it all just kind of works right now in Alberta. But again, we don't know if 2 years from now CMHC says we've done enough, we're done. There's no more program, right? So we can only work in the good deals we have today, essentially. I said my whole spiel before I change the slide. So, you have to think about this stuff, and you have to think about if you want to sink or swim in this market. And some people love to say, oh, I'm just going to wait and see. I'm going to wait and see. But people always also underestimate opportunity cost. More money has been lost sitting on the sidelines of investing. not just in talking about real estate, in every type of investment. You can do this. There's numbers after numbers. More money has been lost waiting on the sidelines. More money has been lost taking short positions against the market, thinking everything's going to go to shit, than even the losses if you're in at the wrong time, the right price, right? I mean, if you look at the NASDAQ, if you look at the Dow, if you bought at the peak of 1989, if you bought in the worst year before the Great Depression, you still average 10% returns, right? So I'm not trying to give you a hard sales pitch. I'm just trying to say opportunity cost is a real bitch, especially in a high inflation environment where your money's worth less every day. The $100,000 that felt warm in your bank account in 2020 is only worth like 80 grand now in the same dollars. People really underestimate that. So how are we swimming? Well, we've adapted over these changes that have happened over the last couple years months out west, the changes in CMHC, the changes in the cost of land out there, because with a bunch of zoning changes and stuff, everything has gotten a little more expensive and a little more complicated. So we've really tried to add features to what we offer to make this stuff simpler. So number one, we have a guarantor program. What is that? Going back to the net worth, the liquidity, all those sorts of things, we partner with buyers on deals. So if a buyer's a little short on the net worth or a little short on the deposits, whatever they're missing, we will top them up and take a piece of the building. Now, why are we doing that? It's not for the commission. It's because I'm greedy and I get to own more real estate using my cash on hand, right? By topping, if someone needs 500K net worth, they only have 400, and I show an extra 100 grand and get 10% of their building, 15% of their building, it's a great deal for me. But it's also a great deal for that investor who otherwise wouldn't have access to this because they're short. So it's a mutually beneficial arrangement, right? There is no one else doing that. I've done 12 deals like that already with complete strangers. So in terms of conviction that I believe in this program, I think that's pretty freaking strong, right? And I have one of the clients is totally nuts. She calls me every day. I had to block her phone number. I told her husband not to call me anymore. Like, that's the biggest risk. It's not the money. We have also added a rental guarantee program on select projects with select builders. So why select? Because there's some projects that are so freaking good, I'm not giving a rental guarantee when it's like literally you'd have to, like, I don't know, screw up so badly not to make money. But there's lots of first-time investors, mom and pop people who want a little bit more confidence. So when we paper out the numbers on some of these deals, we will tell you the builder and Meta will ensure you get those rents for 12 months from the day you take possession of the building, whether that unit's vacant, whether that unit's occupied, whatever, doesn't matter. You know you're getting stable cash flow for that first 12 months. Why do we want to do that as well? Because for a lot of people, that first year is kind of a scary year. If you just took all your money from your deposits, you're a little light on cash. If anything is wrong, it takes a little longer to lease up. That's a big fear, right? So if you know for year one, you're getting that stable cash flow coming in the door, you can recover some money for bad days, makes you feel better. The other thing is that we actually opened up a brokerage in Alberta so that we could open up our own property management company. We did that not because I think there's lots of money to be made in property management. It's because I want to make sure that there's a very good experience for our investors and our buyers. There's a lot, you know, when you deal with big property management companies that manage 500 unit buildings, they're very, very good. But when you deal with little property management companies that manage people's condo, their townhouse, I'm sure many of you have experienced it. There's a lot of like very lazy, crappy property managers out there that do the bare minimum. Since we're selling this product, I wanted to make sure our clients got the best quality of customer service, because the easiest client is a repeat client. So it's purely for selfish reasons, but we're not making money in the property management. We're also charging the lowest fees pretty much of anyone out there, because my goal is just come back and buy more real estate. The other thing we did is we put the first year of PM service into the price of the building. Now you might again wonder, why would you want to do that? Well, because property management is a pretty big chunk of cost out of your cash flow. That's why a lot of people want to manage projects themselves. But there's two things. Number one, you're not going to manage a building 3,000 miles away. And number two, CMHC wants professional management. They're very much about de-risking. So we take that first year of property management cost, put it in the loan. That way, it's amortized over 50 years. Your first year cash flow is extremely high because you're basically having no property management. Again, it goes back to that idea of stable, safe cash flows in year one. You know, you can build up a reserve fund in your bank account. That way, if anything goes wrong once you own the building, you have an unexpected repair, something, blah, 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 you have money there, right? And then Alberta office, again, just same thing. I don't know why we had to put that one in capital letters. But essentially, I mean, you can ask around. I don't know anyone else who's going into deals with their clients on their own, right? I think that's a pretty strong statement. And myself and my business, we have 200, give or take, total units in progress in Alberta. So I'm a very big believer in this program. I don't sell things I don't believe in at the end of the day. So I probably should have shown the slides. I forgot. We just added this to the deck today, but I explained it all already. So we back up the loans. We have rental guarantees with select builders. And we have we charge the lowest property management fee out there, as I said, 5%, no leasing fees, no renewal fees, no nothing, right? And we're legit too. There's a lot of, just like in Ontario, property management is supposed to be regulated by the Real Estate Council. There's a lot of property management out there that's just random Bob, and he's not regulated by anything, right? Like all of our money is held in trust accounts and everything else. You got to be really careful with what you're getting. So let's look at an example of a project that we recently sold, and then I'll let you guys go because I'm probably super long on time. But so this is how all of our pro formas look. We use a standard format to make it easy for people. It's probably a little too small or too hard to look at, but we try to make it pretty as well. So the first thing is you'll always see the address in the upper right. And then we always include the requirements, like the qualifying requirements. We just make it simple, right? I don't want you to have to think hard, oh, can I qualify for this or not? It shows, you know, your liquidity, your net worth, how much the deposit is, estimated completion timelines, all that. It's always there. And then you have your price, right? Now, again, this is a little small, but the reason I put this up here is to show you about how we try to do business. This project, we sold it, it's firm deal. I think it sold 3 weeks ago. They have $270,000 of day one equity lift in this deal. When I'm selling you something that doesn't close for a year, you should make a profit on that the day you sign the contract. Even in Toronto, pre-con used to sell for less money than resale. But then the market got so fucked up because everyone was buying so much real estate that builders realized they could sell pre-construction at a higher price than resale. And people said, yes, can I have some more? Right? Because there was this anticipation that prices would keep going up 20, 30% a year. So even if you bought it at a higher price than you could buy an MLS, you would come out ahead. But if you look back at it now, it seems kind of nuts that people were okay with that. When we sell a building that doesn't close for a year, you're getting approximately 5 to 10% lift on that project. And you will see the appraisal prior to firming up your deal. The closer a building might be to occupancy, the closer it would be to its appraised value. And if you're buying a building that's finished and leased, you're paying appraised value, which is fair. Because if your money, your deposits are tied up for a year, you should share in that profit, right? Otherwise, why would you buy a building that's not available today, right? So that's kind of what happens. Now, when you have deals that have this much equity in them on day one, there are ways, depending on market conditions, other things, where you can end up even lower than 5% deposit, right? And that's something that can be discussed more on a one-on-one basis, generally reserved for bigger files because there's always more fat in those kinds of deals. But the point is, not only is this person going to make, give or take, it's small because I was trying to show more of the appraisal, but you have a deal like this where the deposit's around $180,000. And your year one cash flow, because the property management is included, is give or take $48,000. And then it's going to be around $32,000, $33,000 a year. You can't find stuff like that in Ontario. CMHC works in Ontario, it exists, but you're 10 to 15, maybe 20% down minimum because of all those costs and the falling rents. And especially since they changed the CMHC premium from 2.8 to 5.3 or 5.9, no one's even applying in Ontario. Because I'm good buddies with a bunch of the lenders. They say the Ontario applications fell off a cliff. There's like no new applications because the deals are at 15 and 20% down. So people always go, oh, I'm buying a $4 million project, I'm only making $48,000 on it a year. I go, yeah, but you're only putting in $180,000. Your cash on cash return in year one is 27% because you're not paying any property management fees. After that, it's probably about 15, 16%. So you're making 14, 15, 16% cash on cash, and you're also paying off your mortgage too. And you're getting any of the appreciation that exists. You have $270,000 that you just made in your pocket, right? So that's why this program makes money. That's why I'm buying as many as I can. That's where the real value is. I do want to explain very carefully, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme, right? Real estate is a long hold. This is not for, oh, sweet, I got 270 upside, I'm going to try and flip this thing tomorrow. Like, that's not the objective, because appraisals are appraisals. They're not always the exact sale price. Just because we take, when they take the income, they apply the average cap rate in the market, that doesn't mean some guy's ready to roll to buy that tomorrow at 3.85. They might be. We've done a lot of assignment deals where we've gotten the appraised value for buyers because some buyers just want that cash flow right away. But the real value is that a year or two down the road, you can go back and pull out that 180, 200,000 and go buy another one. That's where the money is. Because if you flip this, you pay capital gains too. And that's stupid. Capital gains is bullshit. Especially in Canada where we don't have a 1031 exemption like the States where you get to roll it forwards. You have to pay that capital gains right away. That's why Canada has a real estate stuck problem. It's like literally a thing that's a known problem in Canada. People never sell assets in Canada. The market has no movement. States, people trade assets all the time because you're allowed to reinvest without paying capital gains as long as you do it within a certain time frame. So you should never, ever sell real estate, ever, 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 ever. Just keep refinancing it. The other thing that a lot of people don't know is that in Canada, we have capital cost allowance. I mean, we have it pretty much everywhere, but you're allowed to depreciate this building. So for basically, even with that kind of cash flow and that kind of mortgage payment principle, you're basically never going to pay income tax on this building. Like, because say this building's 3.6 million. You put the land at 3 million, or sorry, at 600,000. The building's worth $3 million. Every year, you can do accelerated depreciation up to 10%, which is 300,000. You only have 48,000 plus 20,000 of principal, 60,000. So you're not even coming close to your maximum depreciation. So you can zero out your income tax every single year for a long time. Because what's 3 million divided by 60 is 50. So for the entire amortization of this mortgage, you can pay zero income tax. I mean, it won't work out exactly because you're going to pay out, your rents will go up over time. But for pretty much as long as you're alive, you won't pay income tax. That's why you should never sell these buildings. Because when you sell them, then you have to pay the income tax, right? But the point is you're getting this money now and you're allowed to grow that money. You can take that cash flow and use it to buy more real estate. You can refinance to buy more real estate, which is the tax deduction. That's why people like this stuff. That's where the real value is. Never sell a cash flowing building. So one last thing and then I'm done. This is an ad I saw on Instagram from someone else, not from us. And I bring it up because it's full with a lot of mistakes. So the only reason I'm bringing this up is I'm not saying buy real estate from me only or whatever, but at least be very cautious who you're dealing with because there's a lot of people who jumped on this bandwagon that really don't know anything they're talking about. So a couple things that instantly tell me this person doesn't know anything. CMHC logo and the Canada logo are trademark, and if you use them in advertising, they will sue you. So trust me, that's a bad sign. Second thing is they say only 5% down. I am very careful if you listen back to this, it's being recorded that I say up to 95% financing, as little as 5% down. Nobody can guarantee you it's only 5% down. There is A, market conditions outside of our control. B, if that CMHC adjudicator got in a fight with his wife that morning, maybe he cuts you down to 93% because you're the first guy he talked to. It's just like going to court. You never know. You're pretty sure, but you never know. And they can pick any random thing. I'm not saying you go from 5% down to 30% down, but you could end up at 7% down just because they don't like you, right? And there's nothing you can do. It's totally at their discretion. So we are very careful to explain to people, we hope for 5, 80, 90% of our deals get to 5, but are you going to complain if you end up at 7% or 8% down and you own an apartment building? No, because you qualified with enough extra cash to do it anyway. Number 3, interest rates as low as 2.8 to 3.5. That was the insurance premiums at the time. So I'd be very scared to buy real estate from someone who doesn't know the difference between an insurance premium and an interest rate. There has not been a 2.8% or lower CMHC since like 2022, right? But the point is they don't even know what the interest rate is. They probably went on the CMHC website, they saw a percentage and they copied it into an ad, which tells me they didn't spend a minute actually learning anything about the program. The rest of it is cash positive investment is not a sentence and they spelled amortization wrong. So, if I'm spending money on ads, I would at least make sure the spelling is correct. But I didn't say who this is. I know who it is, but my point is be very cautious who you work with. There's a lot of people jumping into this because it's exciting, there's opportunity, there's money to be made on all sides, but there's also a lot of people who have no idea what they're doing. I see very bad cash flow analyses, I see overpriced product, I see things that make no sense. I saw someone send me a building in Port Hope the other day, and he's like, this thing will get to 5% down, no problem. It's a $10 million building at the property tax at $12,000. I'm like, I don't know much about Port Hope, but I don't think any $10 million building only has $12K of property taxes, right? And they had an interest rate of 3%, which is impossible because the bond is at 2.9%. So that would be a really nice interest rate. But just be careful. And if it seems like the pricing is crazy good, be very cautious. The pricing out west is good, but make sure what the builder is actually including. Everything out west is a la carte. If it doesn't say it in the contract, you're not getting it. So when we do deals, all of our deals, and it will be written, it's too small to see it here, but it says everything that's included, right? All of our deals are landlord ready. You're getting the landscaping, the hardscaping, the fencing, the lighting, the blinds, including like the appraisals included, the environmental reports, everything that's needed for the project is included. A lot of guys I know, they say, oh, I found some guy who's gonna build it for like 100 grand less. And when they show up at the property, there's no sod, there's no front stairs. You can't get in the door, right? There's no fences, there's no lighting, there's no blinds, nothing. So then you're scrambling to get a contractor to put down sod. You have tenants who can't walk into their house because there's no stairs to get in the property. You have to go to home, or no appliances even, right? So like make sure all those things are in your agreement, because a builder's only selling you a house unless it's written in there. But yeah, that's about it. Look, at the end of the day, programs like this, probably not for everyone, but there's a lot of opportunity. And I'm a big believer. I've been around multifamily real estate my entire life. I've always invested in it. And if you're in real estate for the long game, I don't know anyone who hasn't made money owning apartment buildings for 10 or 20 years. It's not a get rich quick scheme, but it's an opportunity that allows you to get in the door on assets in a certain size that would otherwise be unattainable for most people. That's it.
So Jay, if someone's interested in this, where would they learn more about this or take like a next step?
Sure. So it's an answer I would give two different ways depending on whether you're a realtor or whether you're a buyer here with your client or whatever. But first off, we have a ton of resources on our own YouTube channel that you can just listen to about really boring, nerdy details if you want to. In the car maybe is a good idea. What I usually say next is we keep a live Google Doc. It's got all the inventory of what we have, everything from like 6 plexes up to 200 unit plus buildings. We also have a full set of documents like FAQs, examples of approvals, examples of real finished rents, all these things. But what really should happen, because it's a very complicated thing to navigate when you don't know it, is create a group chat with me on WhatsApp with yourself or the client if you're working with an agent, and we can just explain everything in detail, because I know the answers to everything. And we have direct relationships with every consultant necessary to do these deals. So including the lenders, everyone else. So generally what we do is I love to just answer all the questions. I have no problem talking about this stuff for hours. I hate phone calls, just text me. I know some people don't like it, but I prefer to WhatsApp all day long. I have a terrible memory. If you call me, I won't remember what we talked about. If it's in WhatsApp, it's there forever. So when I say something stupid, I can reference my stupidity days later. But generally the way it works is we explain the program. When someone's comfortable, the next kind of step would be pre-qualifying them with the lender. So we always make sure that they talk to a lender first and they understand what their actual buying capacity is, because there's really no point in having you sign a contract on a property if you don't have the money, right? This pre-qualification is very important that you disclose everything accurately. CMHC does not mess around. They do a way more deep dive on you than a normal loan. There's crazy reasons I've seen people get killed at the last minute and have a deal fall apart. Like they will find out. I heard about a deal where there was a photo. A guy was in a group photo with a known drug trafficker, but it wasn't just him and the drug trafficker. There was like 30 people. It was like at a public event, and he was like 9 people away, and they denied like $20 million loan. I'm not saying that's the normal scenario. I'm just saying it's like going to your doctor. They can't help you if you don't tell them the truth about what's wrong in your situation, right? So typically we introduce people to the program. We explain a lot of the details. I always have them pre-qualify with the lender first. it's also a good opportunity to ask the lenders what it is that goes on, right? Because they can tell you all the other nerdy stuff I don't care about, and that makes people learn a lot more about the program. And then at that point, if there's interest, we just talk about projects. We look at each individual project and kind of take it from there. Yeah.
Jake, I don't want to speak for you, but I mean, he's not here to sell these. He's not here to grab a commission on anything. Like that's Jake. I think he just saw people creating generational wealth from this and couldn't help himself. He reached out to us, just like I got to get the word out.
Yeah.
And tell people put on this presentation, and so I hope. I mean, whether you're in a position to invest in this or if that's even in your mind right now, I just hope this was helpful for you, or at least got the gears turning towards some sort of investment or moving your family forward. Thank you very much for your time, Jake. Somebody have any
Thanks for having
questions?
us. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Sure. So CMHC, they're the government. It's just like applying for a passport. It's not as fast as we'd love, right? So right now they have a bit of a backlog because when they made that rule change in June, everyone rushed to they gave a 2-week notice. So everyone rushed in 1,000 files, which is normally half a year's worth of files in 2 weeks. So typical timelines are usually about 60 to 70 days. Right now it's looking like about 100 days because they're so backlogged, but I've noticed that's also slowing back down. So the way, typically we can get you a term sheet from a lender within a few days, and the lender will have it go to their underwriter. They'll review your file and they'll say, yeah, everything here looks good. This building is compatible with CMHC. You seem to meet the requirements, and there's no reason that lending shouldn't happen unless like someone is lying, essentially. Then the file gets submitted to CMHC, and usually it's like, again, in normal timelines would be 60, 70 days. Right now it's like 90, 100 days. Yeah, no problem.
What's the biggest hang-up you usually find when people are looking into this?
The biggest hang up in terms of like why they wouldn't want to do it, or like concern? I think for a lot of people, it's just getting over the idea of the size of the purchase, right? Because people are used to buying a $500,000 condo, $800,000 townhouse, something like that. And when they look at it, at first it seems really exciting, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna have like a $2-3 million loan, right? And I can understand why that's scary, but the loan is being supported by the value of the building. And of course, in a single year, markets could change, rents could go up or down, but it would have to be a pretty crummy situation where you're in such a negative cash flow position at some point that you wouldn't be able to keep going. Because the other element is that the pro formas that are generated, that CMHC wants them a certain way, is there's a lot of extra expenses in there that aren't necessarily needed. Because CMHC doesn't look market to market. They just have a general set of numbers they want anywhere in Canada. So for an example, like the repairs and maintenance is kind of artificially high. It's a brand new building with a warranty and you have a security deposit. So why do we have to expense so much for repairs and maintenance? Well, they just want to know because there's other parts of the country and there's resale buildings that don't have a warranty and you can't have a security deposit. So I mean, I know I'm kind of rambling it, but I'd say the biggest thing for people is just getting over the size of this kind of thing. Because even if someone has $500,000, they were maybe looking at a $2 million house, which is a big loan, but it's still only $2 million. With $500,000, they can buy a $10 million apartment building. And so some people that kind of makes them shit their pants a little bit, right? Yeah.
Can you tell me about how much amount of liability do I have if there is a default?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, if there's a default, there's the holding company has 100% exposure to that, but the lender is going to first try to work with you because the last thing they want to do is deal with the default. So they're like, what's going on here? Like, how do we get these payments going, right? If no reconciliation can be made, then they're going to put the project into power of sale. They're going to take their power of sale requires that they try to get a fair market value. It's not like the States where you can just go for a foreclosure and cover your loan. So they're going to try and get the fair market value. And then depending on the terms of your loan, if it comes up short for some reason, like the only reason you would default is if the rents went way down, which if that happened, then the market value would probably go way down. So you'd be responsible potentially for any shortfall in that situation. The real key is you should never be in a default because they want you to have an extra 10% liquid. They want you to have a 25% net worth. They want you to have the capacity to deal with the problems, right? So like if you had a building that's making money for 5 years and then 1 year the rents change and the market's not doing so well, like why would you let it just pay for it, right? Like that's kind of their thought process.
But out here, if I'm paying CMHC insurance, doesn't CMHC go for the default?
Not really. I mean, in my mind, it should work that way, but this is Canada. It doesn't.
What type of work is involved? Sorry, what type of work is involved once you own it?
Well, these are fully the way we do it is fully property managed turnkey. So pretty much the only thing you're doing is filing your taxes every year with the accountant. Maybe once a month, chat with your property manager to make sure things are running smoothly. But these are 100% turnkey. And there's people that I want to manage it myself, right? I want to save the 5%. CMHC will not allow it. They want a minimum of 5 years relevant experience in that asset class. So even a property manager that only does one house would not be allowed to manage a 100-unit building. But also the distance, even if you had the experience, unless you're moving to Edmonton, they're not going to do it. So, yeah, exactly. No, so the point is it's totally turnkey. Like they're dealing with tenant acquisition, tenant problems, maintenance, the evictions. They're dealing with unit inspections, repairs and maintenance. Like obviously you have to approve repairs and maintenance, right? But they deal with it all, right? Correct. To do that.
To do that for you to make it a hands-off investment.
Correct.
Like you can't manage it.
I don't want to manage. Like when I bought my first building in Toronto, I managed it for 6 months. I was like, fuck this, man. Yes, it's on. You'll see it in the cash flow analysis. The property management fees are built in. All of our cash flows are based off of real world, right? I know it was too small on that screen, but like we do proper commercial pro formas. It even includes a reserve fund for future major repairs, right? So that's another reason why it's hard to end up in a default position. If I have a 2% per year fee also that's for reserve fund, that's not actually an expense. It's money you're saving for a rainy day to eventually repair a roof. But in a short year, you really still have that money in your pocket, right? So there's like a lot of extra stuff built in. But yeah, essentially you should have other than occasionally reviewing stuff, talking with the property manager, it's all turnkey. And trust me, my first building I bought in Ontario was a 5-plex. And tenants were calling me every day. Like, you would not believe how much they call over I can't change the light bulb 2 a.m. when the dishwasher stops working.
No one's calling you.
They don't even know you exist. Don't give them your name. It's kind of polarized into two categories where it's a lot of like what I call like the mom and pop investor who are doing like 6-plex, 8-plex, maybe 12. And then the other end of the scale is like 100+ unit buildings for professional landlord. There's not a lot of people buying in the middle because if you're the average kind of person who's saved up can afford to put 100, 200,000 deposit, or you're like very wealthy investor, there's not a lot of guys that have like 500 grand. They either have 100 or they have like 10 million. Kind of. Yeah.
So what would you do if you were one of those guys? You would buy 2?
If you have 500? Well, no, we have bigger projects as well. It's just we don't have as many because we found that a lot of small stuff sells, a lot of big stuff sells, so we focus there more. But I have a 24 unit, I have a 48 unit, I have mid-sized stuff. It's just more product
Which
move.
ones are more profitable? Or is it by door size?
Well,
the more doors you have, the more.
in general, the bigger the better because there's efficiencies, right? Like, and you're getting better interest rates the higher you go. But it's not as simple as that, obviously, because you could buy one project that's overpriced in one area and you can buy a better deal. But generally, yeah, bigger is always better because the difference in the interest rate could be as much as like 0.4, 0.5%, which might not sound like a lot, but on a 100-unit building, that makes a big difference.
So do you guys, once you say, okay, I have X amount of dollars and I'm looking, this is my pool, do you guys find like the best bang for your buck type thing?
We try to. One big thing we're very particular on is we're very careful who we work with on the builder side. Because Edmonton, like it is the West, it's literally the Wild West. Like there's like shady builders out there who will just take your deposit and disappear, right? And we thankfully never had that kind of problem, but there's also builders who just build absolute shit quality product. And there's builders who don't really know what they're doing. They're gonna have delays and all these other problems. So we don't just go hunting for any product. Like we've now built relationships with like 3 or 4 builders that we really trust, and they can basically find us all the best stuff we need in the right neighborhoods. And that even when someone comes with a new builder, like if they really want to work with us, like I will put them through the ringer because we've had bad experiences with random builders, not like stealing money, but just unable to actually deliver and project getting canceled. Now we have these guys we've worked with for a long time that are like clockwork, right? And that's the most important thing. And area is very important. There's kind of like two streams of thoughts on this. There's lots of guys out there promoting a lot of subdivision product, like brand new subdivision. We primarily, like 95% of our stuff is infill sites. I personally, my own buying, I prefer infill. I think you're building in an established neighborhood. There's much more demand for rental in an established neighborhood. Like people want to be in a neighborhood where everything is not just a house. Like there's shops, there's culture, there's restaurants. Like there's more demand to live in Ossington than there is to live in Whitby at the end of the day, right? So that's my theory on it, at
I've
least.
seen lots of things that like probably that are fake or whatever, bad ones. But I've heard it's like 1 year shovels in the ground and then it's ready to go.
They build extremely fast there, especially the townhouse product. Like average turnover for a townhouse is like hard time is probably 6 to 8 months of construction. Like they build very, very
I
fast.
see lots of fiveplexes that keep getting advertised.
Yeah.
In Alberta.
I'll be honest, we try to avoid the smaller deals, the 5s and the 6s. I prefer 8s and bigger. I don't want to come off rude, but it's like we've had a lot of issues with the 5-plex buyers because it's just like when people that they're right at the limit of not being able to afford it, they're very stressed out, they cancel a lot. Whereas people who can afford like an 8-plex or a 10-plex, like I don't also like selling to people who are at the very minimum limit because like if anything goes wrong, they're like on a knife edge, right? Like I want people you shouldn't invest in something if it keeps you awake at night, right? I don't care what it is, maybe a government bond, but otherwise like you shouldn't invest in something if it keeps you awake at night, it was too big an investment for you. So, and also the lenders will absolutely crush you on a 5-plex. They hate them. So, because think about the loan size is so small for them and they're making like 0.5% of interest. It's not worth their time. So they'll charge huge fees and other things. I'm not saying it's still not a good deal. Like if it's all someone can afford, it's definitely better than buying a condo. But like if they can find a buddy and buy an 8-plex together, they're going to be in a lot better shape. Like I've seen on 5-plexes, 3% lender fees on top of your loan. Whereas on an 8-plex, you might have no lender fee. They just really don't, they're mandated to do the 5-plex, but they don't want to do the 5-plex.
Is there carrying warranty on these new homes?
Yeah, so in Alberta, they have multiple warranty companies. It's like, again, freedom, economics, right? Generally, most builders will work with Alberta New Home Warranty, which is pretty equivalent to Tarion. Like, it's like same thing, staged over multiple years. Some builders we work with, we do Alberta New Home Warranty. Other builders, we just do a commercial warranty. Because just like Tarion, like trying to get the last couple of years out of it's kind of BS. Whereas if you just get like a shorter but more bumper to bumper warranty, it can be better. And because you're getting the transfer of all the warranties from the individual materials and suppliers anyway, so that there's more options out there is what I'm trying to say. But it's disclosed on every single deal, obviously, what you can do. And you can always choose to add that warranty if you want. It's not very expensive as well. It varies depending on the project, but Alberta, generally, we don't squeeze people in shoe boxes like in Ontario. So like for small projects, they're mostly town type product where your like upper unit's going to be like 1,200-1,300 and then your lower will be like 600-700. If it's a true apartment building, 1 bedrooms might be like 500 to 700 and 2 bedrooms might be like 7 to 1,000. 3 bedrooms might be like 8 to 1,200 kind of size. It would depend on the whatever the builder designed for that building specifically. Generally, bigger units perform better. So like I try to avoid buildings that are like all studios and 1 bedrooms. They really underperform because your cost is higher. Like if you have 10,000 square feet to build in and you put in 10 1,000 square foot units, you have 10 kitchens. But if you put in 2,500 square foot units, you have 20 kitchens, 20 bathrooms. So it's more expensive to build and the rents are lower. So like generally people prefer bigger and more family oriented units out there. Depends on the product. So when you're doing infill, there's always parking constraints because if you're building on an infill lot in a neighborhood, like there's no space, right? So generally like an 8-plex will usually have like 4 parking spots on site. And then in Alberta, pretty much every street has street parking with no cost. So you just park, so it's not a real big issue. If it's a new development, then usually it has 1-to-1 parking. And if it's like a true apartment building, it'll usually have underground, which is a premium parking that people pay a lot of extra money for because it's cold there.
What can you expect when you travel to Edmonton, these kind of trips?
Oh, it's all just partying, man. It's like Pretty much what we do is we used to do it same day, and people like, I don't mind being on a plane for 8 hours in one day, but apparently other normal human beings did not find that enjoyable. So we now do it as like fly in, have a nice, we basically tell everyone like get there by 5 p.m. We've got a group rate at a really nice hotel. We're going to go out for dinner with a builder, have some drinks, hang out. And then basically 9 a.m. the next day, we get on a bus and we go see multiple projects, multiple sites, finished projects, under construction, everything, and kind of just learn the city, right? And then generally that runs the whole day. And then people hop on a flight out around 5, 6 p.m. or they can stay the weekend, do their own thing, that kind of thing. Yes?
Just a question about the landlord-tenant board. So if you have to go to the board, who's taking care of that? Like representation?
The PM will take care of it. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty simple stuff over there. And like, again, you know, trying to collect back rent, it's all handled by property management. I mean, you could do it yourself if you want, but no. The point is not to have to, right? Yeah.
I guess in follow-up with that, because this is the province of Alberta, because we deal with legal contracts and things along those lines, how much is the average cost for a lawyer? That's registered in Alberta that we would need to retain. Like, would you be able to assist us with that, or do we have to search someone out that knows this type of program?
Great question. So I have a lawyer that I highly recommend anyone use. She's the lawyer I use for all my deals. We met her a long time ago because we used to sell a lot of pre-construction in Alberta. So in my own working with her, she's been involved in over 500 of my clients' pre-con deals and over 100 of our CMHC deals. The reason I'm including all of my deals, the other reason I like her is because she owns a bunch of CMHC as well. So again, you know, work with people who buy this stuff. The biggest thing, because CMHC, this is, a lot of people don't know about this, any deals that we've done with a lawyer who doesn't know about the program have been a disaster. Not because there's like, they're finding wrong things in the contract, it's because they literally don't understand how the loan works, how any of the stuff works. So it becomes a learning exercise on the customer, and it becomes like a 2-month long legal review, right? So yeah, we have all the consultants, including the lawyer. Generally, as I mentioned, there's no land transfer taxes or anything in Alberta. Your all-in closing costs, inclusive of a lawyer, are gonna be give or take like around the 15 grand. That includes paying for your lawyer. In commercial lending, you pay for the lender's lawyer as well. That includes your land registry, disbursements, everything else. So all in, you're like 15 grand, whether that's like a 2 million or a 30 million. That's the crazy thing about it, right? Whereas in Ontario, you're going to be paying, you know, hundreds of thousands in land transfer tax and development charges on top. But yeah, you want to have a good lawyer. I would never do a deal that someone doesn't get a legal review on anyway, and that lawyer has to be involved in the deal anyway through the whole CMHC process, so that you're with them for a year or so. Yes?
Property management. So the first year is included.
Mm-hmm.
Following years, it's a set rate, or are there increases incrementally?
Well, we don't have any plan to increase anytime soon or anything. We're at 5% of rent. I mean, I can't guarantee we'll never change the rate. What if we're losing money every year running it? But we're not, as I said, I'm not trying to make a big pile of money off of the property management. As long as we can pay our staff and make a reasonable profit, my goal is more to have happy people making money and buying more properties. So yeah, there's no plan to suddenly change it to 20% or something the next year.
Amount of increase generally would be in the range of, like, if you were to be increasing or have increased?
Well, I've never increased it, or like there's a lot of competition out there. Like if I suddenly try to, you could just leave, right? You're not forced to stay. But I mean, if it ever changed, I can imagine it changing like 1% or something like that. But yeah, like it's not, the goal is not to make, as I said, big dollars off the PM service. It's to get people wanting to buy more if they're making money at the end of the day. Yeah. Any other questions?